Coolest nerds you'll ever meet.
All right, I'm going to ask you a few questions here. Are you in airplane mode?
Yep.
Okay.
Your turn.
Thank you.
We get a phone call in the middle of this. Like, excuse me, I got to take this.
Okay, getting into my place here.
I guess I'll have a better posture now.
All right, so I'm going to read you the thing I wrote at the top of this, and I'm going to read to everybody just so we kind of get an idea of what we're doing here. It says, my goal in this conversation is just to listen to you and get your side of the story. By story, I mean your story. I can't guarantee that any of this footage will end up in the final cut, so just relax, forget that we're recording. When I return home, I'm going to finalize a book that I'm writing, and so one of my goals is just to make sure I don't put the book out without, I don't want to leave anything out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to drive around, interview about 20, 30 people, and make sure that we're getting everybody's perspective. And I'm going to sit down and write the final chapter of that book and kind of get an idea of where our movement, by that I mean our progressive movement's going. So your input's really valuable to me there. And when like I said, I'll edit the footage, but I'm not going to be in, like, the edits will probably be pretty quick when it comes down to the final thing. So try to remember a little bit, like, the people watching it won't be hearing my question. So if I were to say to you, like, what color is the sky? If you think about it, instead of saying blue, you might say the sky is blue. Try to, not a big deal, just be natural. It's like, I'm sure there's going to be some good stuff in here. So just like I put a little test question on here. What did I say? Sam, do you like dogs?
I like dogs.
Okay, very good. You get it, absolutely. So when we start off, just
stay leaning back.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Could you just tell me a little bit about?
Do you want me to move the chair back a little?
No, I just want to make sure we're in frame. And okay.
Your head is in my frame.
My head is in your frame right now. If I get up.
No, if you stay like this or lean back, you won't.
I don't want to be in a position where if I move, I block. So if I lean forward, I block.
Yeah, I just saw a little bit of your hair.
Okay.
I can move the chair back.
Yep, let's move back a little bit.
Okay.
Did you do the shaved, like, design thingy too?
Yeah, this is the band label for one of our friends. They had a CD release party on Friday that we went to, and that's their album.
Yeah, that was their album cover. I wanted to make them feel good, and like. So now I'm pretty sure I'm completely out of frame. Okay.
Yep, awesome.
All right.
Cool.
And so why don't you start by telling me a little bit about yourself? What do you do just for fun?
So I'm more of a gamer. I'm a very nerdy type. I got my gaming computer set up here that you can tell this is all me. And then over there I got all my PlayStation. I've been Sony since I've been 11. So
you don't do any Xbox?
I've done Xbox for Halo. That's about the only Xbox I ever did in my life. And then, big fan of Lego, big fan of Magic the Gathering, D&D, Warhammer 40K is in the back too. Basically, I'm more of the indoors type.
So on Halo, were you one of the guys that were no-scoping me all the time with the sniper rifle? Was that you?
No, I was the one that was causing everybody else to lose.
That was me, actually.
Yeah, I was the one that, like, put on a helmet and get out of our house. That was the one I was.
And so aside from your gaming, do you have any other hobbies? Things you just do for pure enjoyment that have nothing to do with politics necessarily?
Yeah, no. So I'm still in the reserves. So I try and stay active. I go, to the gym. I like to go hiking, and I like to snowboard when I get a chance. But
awesome.
Around here it's just mostly Netflix and chill. Crack open a cold one every now and again.
All right, excellent. And let's talk about something a little more serious. What is the biggest problem facing America today? What comes to mind when I ask that question?
Honestly, to me, it's just the apathy, the disenfranchisement of our government. Like, people do not trust their government. They're not happy with literally any aspect of it. But the issue isn't that they're upset that they're not taking any actions towards it. It's kind of like in the Roman Empire. If you build the circus, they will come. That's what we are right now. We are the decline of Rome. That's the biggest issues. No other way to put it.
Well, on that topic, do you feel like electing a reality TV star to our nation's highest office is can you correlate that to the fall of Rome?
Yeah, if you think about it, the emperors were obviously a line of succession, but once it became split and divided, and you were fighting over territories by generals, it became this sensationalism again. And of course, it was always an exercise of hubris. Who could have the most wealth? Who could have the most power while taking it from the lowest of the population, right? So putting a reality TV star, and I think that's giving him a little bit credit too, or a little bit too much credit on that part, but absolutely electing someone like that is a huge problem, but the problem isn't necessarily him. He's a symptom of the issue. People wanted a populist message. He was the only one of the final two candidates that was delivering one. So when people say Bernie would have won, they're not necessarily wrong. He would have probably won because he had a populist message that didn't literally attack every other demographic that wasn't white and rural.
Okay. Yeah, I think most people do believe that Bernie would have won. Okay, well, I think you kind of answered that a little bit, but what do you think we need to do to reclaim our country? What kind of things do we need to do to get our country back from this fall of Rome, as you put it?
Yeah. So honestly, it's just engagement. People need to realize that if you're going to complain about something but do nothing to fix it, then it's not going to get fixed. And waiting for someone else to fix our problems means that we're either going to be waiting or the person who fixes it isn't going to fix it to our liking. And so civic engagement, running for office, helping people get elected, just in general, learning and educating yourself about government. The problem is it's not sexy, it's not fun, it's not interesting to most people. It is hard work. And most people would rather watch football, drink beer, go to parties, get drunk, have sex, do drugs.
How do we change that? How do we get people more excited? I mean, it feels like Bernie Sanders found a way to get people. One of the things I always said my whole life was, I wish people could get as excited about their communities and changing their country as they did with, a sporting event that literally had no meaning. And I felt like I'd go to these stadiums and I was like, these people are more excited about this than they are about football. So how do we keep that going?
So I'm going to have to answer the question with a question. If I knew the answer, I'd tell you, right? But it's all around marketing. If we spend all of our resources on marketing a new product, that sugar's good for you, that you have to have this latest gadget, and you see it in government, lobbyists, the pharmaceutical industry, the military-industrial complex, they're the ones throwing oodles of money at these leaders, quote unquote, to pass legislation that benefits them. It's all in the marketing. If we could actually develop our own marketing agencies and corporations and entities to truly hit the markets of at the local, state, and federal levels all across the country, we could galvanize the country into acting a certain way. If we could get movie stars and actresses and singers and all these, pop culture icons, if we can get them on board to make it sexy, like they do for cigarettes, like they do for cars, like they do for phones, that's how we could do it. Now, granted, that's a grandiose solution, but it is the simplest solution.
It is. Let's play a word association. I'm going to say a word, and you say the first thing that comes to your head. And you can give one-word answers, or if you feel like you want to, you can elaborate on the answer. So I'm just going to start in a cat.
Dog.
Dog.
Cat.
DNC.
Chair.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Ouch.
Pancakes.
Delicious.
Hillary Clinton.
Is sigh a word?
It is a word. Football.
American.
Beer.
German.
Jill Stein.
Good intentioned.
80s TV sitcoms.
Outstanding.
And Nina Turner.
Future POTUS.
All right. So, Debbie Wasserman Schultz inspired you. Is that true?
Yeah, no, she did not inspire me in the slightest. The thing about it is, and I got to be a little candid here, I wasn't really aware of the Bernie movement, of the progressive movement when I was running for state representative. I came from a very, narrow field of understanding of politics. I educated myself on things, and it turned out to be progressive in nature. But I came from active duty, and then I ran in a Republican district as a Democrat. And I was just, okay, I heard about Bernie. I was like, oh, I like his ideas. Cool.
You were doing what Bernie was doing without even knowing.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so I didn't even know anything about Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I didn't know anything about all the whatever that happened until I lost my race Trump got elected, and then I was, just as everybody else, wondering what I can do next. The DNC chair came up, and then I was doing research on that. That's when I found out about Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and I'm like, are you kidding me? This is blatant corruption. This is blatant denial of our liberties. I mean, granted, primaries aren't protected under the Constitution, but it's still your vote, and that vote for that candidate determines your actual guaranteed vote in the general. Which is why our founding fathers said you probably shouldn't be doing political parties, but they didn't think it's necessary to put it in the Constitution because, hello, it's obvious. You don't create a power structure for the elite to control so that the masses have to deal with it. Because that's what we fought against to become who we are today. You know, we would still be, you know, I don't think constituents, what's the, can't think of the word of Britain. Liege? No. You get the idea. I can't think of it.
What did your friends and family say when you told them you were running for head of the DNC?
Oh my. Well, my mother, let's just say she wasn't pleased.
Really?
She was not pleased at all. My brother rolled his eyes. My sister she also rolled her eyes. And my dad kind of did the mediator thing. It was like, honey, to my mom, like, honey, just calm down, let him say his part. And then I explained to my dad, he's also Army infantry. Now he's corrections. But I explained to him, it's like, Dad, you and I both know we raised our right hand to protect and defend the Constitution. I would be remiss in that oath if I didn't do everything in my power to fulfill it. And if that means military service, great. But that unfortunately wasn't enough. So I ran for office. And he was like, you know what, that makes sense. I can respect that. And then when I explained the same thing, like the DNC chair, if I can win that chair, I can fundamentally change the way this country's politics works, because I will be taking one half of the spectrum that is causing the issues and actually redirect it so that it becomes part of the solution. And that's why I ran for it, and that's why he supported it. And ultimately, my parents and family, they weren't necessarily overtly supportive by the end of it, but they were at least like, yeah, that's my boy or that's my brother on CNN. So
that's pretty awesome. I mean, they had to be. I'm going to pause the interview for 1 second just because I feel like my... No. So just trying to make sure this counterweight keeps it up because it's kind of gradually started. And Carrie, if you could keep an eye on that, make sure if it does start to, because
so it doesn't chop off his head.
Yeah, I've got salmon shot here, and it's just the weight. It just started to pull it down. I think I've got it fixed now, but if you notice it doing that again, please pull it. And okay, we're getting okay. Everything's cool. We'll just splice that together. Again? Yep, we're recording, and
yes, we are recording.
And Sam, let me test 1, 2, 3. You can just get your mic level again.
Yeah, sure. Test 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we're good. Just want to be sure. All right, so we'll splice that together later. Okay, so your family ultimately ended up supporting your run.
Mildly.
Tell me about the campaign. What did you learn from it?
Well, I learned that it is. It definitely takes a team to get anything done, and even though for the most part, the first, I'd say, 2/3 of the campaign was largely done on my own volition. You know, calling friends, hey, can I crash on your couch in Houston, Phoenix, what was the other one, Detroit or whatever. But then once I got, you know, my message out there and people started hearing about me and knowing what I was doing, you know, that's when people started coming and saying, hey, do you need help with this? And I said, yes, I do. And then we started organizing, we started getting things done. And it, I think, helped prepare me for what I'm going to be doing when I run for Congress in 2018. It helped me establish, you know, team mindset and understanding what it takes to run a campaign. I ran my own campaign as a state representative, but I mean, 1,000% my own. So I didn't know if I was doing it right or wrong. I just knew you needed materials. I knew you needed a logo, and I know you needed to be face-to-face with people. So myself was knocking on doors, you know, for 5 weeks straight, 12, 14-hour days, just sun up to sundown, knocking on doors, handing out flyers.
That's amazing.
It was interesting. There's a couple stories there. I don't know if we're going to get into it, but there's a few funny stories with it.
This is your interview. Wherever you want to go, you go there. I know this is just a structure.
Well, I was going to say, when I was running for state representative, I kind of experienced some of the I don't know, the tension that's been around our country, right? You're knocking on people's doors and they're aggressively answering. I've had 2 people pull weapons on me. They had firearms in their right hand and then approached me and said, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "Well, I was handing you this." And I walk right up to them with an arm's length of their firearm, hand them material.
That's serious campaigning.
And then walk away. And then I had the cops call it on me. And they're like, "Who are you and what are you doing?" I was like, "Well, hi, my name's Samuel Ronan. I'm running for state representative. I'm a Democrat. I also support law enforcement, but law enforcement reform." And they're like, "Do you have any idea?" And I was like, "No, I don't, because I don't carry that on me. These slacks don't exactly have room for it." So I even got to deal with heckling from police in a Republican district. But to answer your question about what did I learn from it, I started Our Voice from basically growing all that. But the growing pains of Our Voice were just the same. You start off with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of volunteers, but how do these things usually go? Not everybody carries their weight, or maybe not everybody can carry their weight. So it ends up trickling off, and then you get these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 core people that do the work. And, the rest is history. Our Voice is national now. We're building state organizations. We have a phone application. It's growing, and it's going to be able to change the game. And now I'm running for Congress. I have a team being built too. We're also going to be doing a national platform. We want to build a movement. We want to have a true progressive slate, not just for me, but for Congress, Senate, governor, all the way up and down the ballot across all 50 states. Because it's not enough that I win, or enough that Bernie wins, or, Tulsi Gabbard wins. We all have to win. We need 435 congressmen getting elected in 2018 who give a damn. And it can happen. We can replace literally every single one of those people in 2018 if we pull our resources together. And that's what I'm going to try and do.
Is this region that you're the district that you're running in? Is it? I'm guessing it's normally Republican controlled.
Yeah, and it's actually not as bad as when I ran for state representative, because the 62nd is 80-20, but the first congressional is like a 6-point difference, so it's like a 54, 56, something like that. But the incumbent Steve Chabot is a Republican, and he would win, lose until they gerrymandered, and then he has just been sitting there ever since 2010, I guess.
How are you gonna compete in a gerrymandered district?
Well, the good news is we are running an unapologetically progressive campaign, meaning the platform, but we're also going to focus all of our efforts on organizing and getting volunteers to knock doors. And with the Our Voice app, we'll be able to get a heat map of what people actually care about. Because what we'll do is we'll knock on the doors, we'll say, "Hey, what are your top 5 political things that you care about?" We'll put it in the thing, write down their address, and come back to it, and then say, "Hey, by the way, this is the Samuel Ronan, or the Ronan 2018 campaign. He was the one that, is fighting for this, this, and this. Could we count on your vote?" kind of thing.
It's amazing how many of progressive platforms that Republicans are receptive to. Don't you think that they are generally receptive to a lot of our ideas?
They are, and that's why I'm saying it's not about being one party or the other. It's about having the right idea and the right message. And that's, when I said I did research while I was active duty to prepare myself for running for office, it turned out to be progressive, because the conclusions I came to were the more you can empower people to spend their money, the more you can empower people to have savings and to invest in their own future and not have to worry about debt or bills or taxes, the better everything becomes. If you have a well-educated, happy individual who goes out and spends their money that they spent 8 hours a day earning, things get better for the country as a whole. Like this microphone can only be produced and manufactured and bought if you have a trucking company, a warehousing plant, the people who develop this stuff, the people who create the parts of it, the designer of the microphone, the testers of it, the programming that's involved. There's so much that is involved in just this little microphone right here to get to Walmart so that I can go buy it after I worked 8 hours a day doing whatever it is I do, which in this case is metrology. So when our economy benefits the worker far more than it benefits the employer, things improve astronomically. And that was all of my policies, to have our progressive tax rate have a much larger lowest bracket. Instead of the 15% tax rate being upwards of I think you have to make around like 28 or 32,000. That's the cutoff for 15%, and then it goes to 28, then it goes to, it goes 25, 28, something like that. We need to cut that off at like 100,000, 250,000, because guess what? Living in New York City, making $100,000 a year barely gets you any sort of subsistence. It takes $167,000 a year for a family of 4 to survive in New York City. Not to live, not to enjoy, not to have a little bit aside, just to survive. And that's a problem.
Tell me about metrology.
So metrology is the application of the study of weights of measures. That's the easiest way I like to explain it. Calibrations. The military job description is PMEL, Precision Measurement Equipment Laboratory. Basically, I'm a nerd that sits in a environmentally controlled room, presses buttons and makes sure that, like, say this audio frequency is 96,000 hertz. I make sure that it's 96,000 plus or minus 2 or whatever. Or if, this key has a specific dimension of, say, I don't know, I'm just going to say numbers here, 3/4 of an inch by 3 inches, that it is that plus or minus a certain threshold. And it's actually a pretty slick job. It's one of those skilled labor positions that people just don't realize those are jobs that you can do and that you can acquire these skills.
I literally Googled metrology when I was doing my research. I was like, I don't know. I was like, did they misspell meteorology? Is Sam a weatherman?
It's like tuning in today at 11, the weather.
I was like, oh wow, he's a weatherman. Like, this is cool. And then I was like, I Google. How do we reform the Democratic Party? And two-part question: in what image do we reform it?
So, well, it's basically what I said I was going to do. We reform the Democratic Party by fundamentally changing where we currently are. It's not so much that the Democratic Party itself, the structure, the brand, the infrastructure, is corrupted or broken or inefficient. It's the people in charge. And it's not that they are fundamentally evil or cruel or corrupt. It's they've lost sight of what their purpose is. When you have people saying that that healthcare is not a right, and the Democratic Party has been fighting for civil rights, civil liberties, and all these other benefits since its inception, that's antithesis to what they've been doing. So you need to remove those people from power or transition them into a position of mentorship. Because let's say the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, right? Nancy Pelosi has been a Democrat all of her life. She's wealthy, she's very well connected, and she has a lot of experience. There's no argument against the fact that she knows what she's doing. It's not benefiting us in the way we would like it to. So instead, if she can't necessarily deliver the message, what she can do is at least enable the next generation to deliver the message that we need. The problem is our country has devolved from a sense of community and society to a sense of self. We are a very selfish society. And I'm not saying that negatively. I'm saying it in the true scientific sense of the word. We are more focused on ourselves than we are on the communities as a whole. And the leadership in government is a caricature of that.
Where do you think that stems from?
Honestly, I think it is the influence of corporations and wealth and moneyed interests, as has been the case for the past 12,000 years of human civilization.
Because if you're an individual, they can sell you things to define your individuality.
Exactly, and if you have wealth, you can control things around us. The worst thing to ever happen to the human species is this invention of money. We're the only species, we're the only animal that we know to exist that utilizes an artificial structure and an artificial system to define our own capabilities. We're $40 trillion in debt globally. To what? Bugs, grass, the sun, Earth. I mean, last time I checked, I wasn't writing a check to Terra or, Sun, Solar. It's just, I think, to go back to your other question, how do we reform it? It's simply, again, by taking action. You would be shocked at how easy it is to be elected into a position of, like, the executive board at your local level. Now, granted, when we're talking state, it becomes a little trickier. Right. You have to learn the parliamentary tricks. You probably do have to shake a few hands, rub a few shoulders. However, if you don't do it at all, like if you just are pure Dem exit, the Democratic Party isn't going to change. The Republican Party is only going to get stronger. And if the Democratic Party collapses without anything to replace it with, the Republican Party becomes Big Brother.
Exactly.
And considering the direction they're leaning right now, we are literally 2 steps away from fascism. And many could argue we are.
Yeah. I want to get Trump's comments about police brutality concerning.
Oh, and then you're right. I mean, those comments, and then the fact that the rise of police brutality, especially against, guess what, people of color. And then when the correlations are drawn that law enforcement as it stands today stems from slave patrols.
Right. Right.
Slave patrolmen were the law enforcement of then.
The Second Amendment was drafted for slave rebellions. Moving on. I do want to ask you.
That's going to be a heavy question.
Yeah. We could talk for an hour on that. So let's go. You just make sure everything's I can't see your camera. Okay. Did you inspect? Did you hope, or did you expect to be able to pull the endorsement of Senator Sanders when you were running? Because your platform is so similar to his for head of the DNC. Did you? Were you hoping to attain that? Was it hurtful? Did it bother you in any way that he endorsed Keith Ellison and not you?
So I think to answer that question, you have to understand that I am was and still am relatively unknown. I mean, I'm more known now, obviously, but at the time, nobody knew who I was. So there's no expectation that Bernie Sanders should have even known who I was. Right. He knew Keith Ellison and, of course, knew Tom Perez. And arguably, when I arrived at that Columbus forum where Keith Ellison spoke and Ray and a couple others that were running for something, I had actually put my name in the hat by then. But I wasn't arrogant enough to think that I have the same right and the same authority to step onto that stage, aside from the fact that I was arriving late because I was working in the military. Neither here nor there. I wanted to hear what they had to say, because maybe it would be not necessary for me to put my name on the ballot and actually pursue this thing. But when I arrived, obviously, the question was asked, what are you going to do to bring people back to the party? And now, mind you, I get if they were on an elevated stage where there was like a, several yards distance and like elevation and whatnot, you can't just get off the chair and walk and hand a mic to somebody. But they were no further apart than that couch to that table. And it was like a step off. All they had to do was get up off that chair, hand the microphone to somebody in the audience and say, what can I do?
Exactly.
That's it. That is exactly how simple it is. So after I started becoming more prominent in the DNC race, the thought had occurred to me and the team that was developing that we should reach out to Bernie Sanders and we should seek his endorsement. But at the same time, who are we, right? We didn't have the status or the stature to demand such a thing or even to inquire such a thing, whether or not our messages align. And unfortunately, I got pushed out of the first forum in Phoenix, Arizona, and then I got pushed out of the other debate where Sally gave the notorious "that's a gotcha" question. Nothing against Sally, I'm just putting into perspective. If I had been able to be on that debate, I would have been able to put myself on the map a little sooner, because I would have looked to her and said, what do you mean that's a gotcha question? Absolutely, the DNC, the primaries were rigged, but not simply against Bernie Sanders, against everyone, because I experienced it myself.
Against anyone who wasn't Hillary Clinton, apparently, right?
Or a part of the team already.
That leads me into my next question. Did you feel welcomed by the other Democrats during the DNC election?
Some yes, some no. Interestingly enough, my fellow candidates, they embraced me. Donna Brazil, she was very friendly. She was actually the one that nominated me during the actual convention. And that's why I have a different opinion of these people. That's why I'm saying they're not bad people.
Right.
They're just perhaps not the leaders that we need or that we expect. That isn't to say that they're not competent. That isn't to say that they aren't skilled or that they are doing the best they think they can do.
In what ways can they, you mentioned mentoring, in what ways can they mentor other people to do these jobs better?
Take any industry in the country right now. People are focusing on keeping their position. If you're a supervisor or a manager or whatever, nobody wants to train the next guy to take your spot or to go past you because I want that promotion.
Right.
I earned it, it's mine. So the mentoring is just like anything else. If I'm an up-and-coming politician or would-be candidate for Democrat something or another, I should be able to go to the Nancy Pelosi's. I should be able to go to the Tulsi Gabbards or the Elizabeth Warrens or the Bernie Sanders of the world, right? The Tom Perez's and the Keith Ellisons, and be like, hey, I'm interested in getting to where you are. Can you help me get there?
Awesome.
And they should be focusing on making that a reality. Yeah, fine, he gets the spot for 4 years, but he should be focusing on replacing himself in those 4 years or herself. That's mentorship. That is truly empowering the next generation. It's always said that there is no Democratic bench because it's not being built, because there is no mentorship. Absolutely, there's no Democratic bench. We don't exist in, 90% of the country? I mean, over 90% of the country is rural, right? I mean, the metropolitan areas might have the most population, but that doesn't exactly define how many seats there are. And that's the secondary problem. The Democrats are so focused on maintaining what control they have rather than growing it, whereas the Republicans did the exact opposite. They just want as much control as they can because it's a numbers game. If I have 50% plus one of the voting block, I win. And it's that simple. So the mentoring needs to be for that. And unfortunately, for them, their message isn't working. Their message hasn't been working. And the people are now becoming aware of that, and they are upset by that. So you have people like Nancy Pelosi, Tom Perez, Donna Brazile, Keith Ellison even, who are in positions of power to make that change, and they choose not to. It is a choice. Tom Perez might be controlled by the Democratic leadership saying, this is the way you're going to do it. But if he really wanted to make the change, if he truly wanted to impress upon the American people that he's listening, he could go on CNN, MSNBC, and say, you know what? I do believe in universal health care, universal education, fight for 15, clean energy, the whole 9 yards. And that would change the dynamic overnight. That's exactly what I would have done as DNC chair. If the party, youthful exuberance, right? Maybe I am naive and I got the chair and I couldn't have done whatever I wanted to do anyway, right? I would have gone behind their back. I would have gone on CNN and I would have said exactly what I just told you. Because if you can't affect change directly, you have to do it indirectly. I chose the direct path.
Do you think that, talking about using corporate media to get your message out, do you feel that CNN has any interest in you giving a message that's counter to the Democratic Party's current agenda?
Absolutely not. But guess what? They didn't have a choice but to put me on CNN. And even though they gave me 5 minutes and 30 seconds of airtime out of 2.5 hours, the things I did say were the things they never wanted anybody to say. I talked about Dakota Pipeline. I talked about Sable. I talked about the rigging of the primaries. I talked about the things that they did not want to hear. Now, does that mean they're going to call me now? Even if I run for Congress, even if I get some upper, even if Bernie Sanders himself and Tulsi Gabbard, let's just say the whole slate of, heroes of the progressive movement all decided to endorse me. You think they're still going to call me and put me up on CNN? Absolutely not. They'd be insane. I mean, honestly, it is not in their best interest to put me on national television because I will say exactly what needs to be said and what needs to be heard. The beauty about politics, unlike, say, the military or any other trade, right, is politics is truly a profession of ideas and messaging. And when your ideas is the messaging in of itself, the idea merely has to exist and be heard, you dominate. And to use the Roman example again, why do you think Julius Caesar was deified after his assassination? Why did kings and queens of Europe call themselves after him as their title of the highest echelon of nobility? Why do we still to this day embody his economic policies? We're currently in the month of July, are we not? Our Independence Day is in that same month. The man has influenced human society longer than arguably Christ, because he was before Christ, 44 years.
Wow.
So you see my point. It's influence and message. He was very populist. He might very well have been corrupt even for our standards,
Right.
But he always tried to empower people. That's why they loved him so much. Because whenever he conquered a new region or a new territory, he would redistribute that wealth first to his soldiers, to their families, and to anyone that was following the military. And then when he would come back to Rome, he would redistribute it back to the citizenry. Now,
Good marketing.
Exactly.